Hey guys, welcome back. Joe Brunsman, Insurance Broker of the Stars. Today, the time has finally come. The first cyber insurer ever has banned ransomware payments. Sort of. There's a little more nuance to this story. So as I was reading it in the press, this is either completely overblown by journalists who have no knowledge in this area, or it's completely underwhelming coverage that doesn't really get to the meat of why people should actually be interested in this story if they're a business owner. So before we jump into that, this is my latest book, Damage Control, Cyber Insurance Compliance. That is where you can download it for free. Now, yes, the first insurer has decided to eliminate ransomware payments. But there's a little more to the story than that. Now, first of all, AXA Insurance Company, they're no longer going to be writing new cyber insurance policies which actually cover extortion payments, which I would say means that the preponderance of the policies they still have in place will actually cover those payments. Now, yes, they are a major insurer, but that's in Europe. That being said, I would just imagine that every insurance company executive out there that has cyber insurance on their books, they're going to be taking a really close look at AXA and what actually plays out from this. So is AXA going to be seen as kind of a movement leader here, and business owners are going to say, you know what, I'm okay with this moving forward. I understand what we're trying to do here. It's better for society. Or are the clients of AXA just going to start leaving in droves because there are plenty of other insurers out there that will still cover those ransomware payments? Now, why are they ultimately doing this? Well, first of all, they, just like every other cyber insurance company out there, are losing money hand over fist due to ransomware. And there's kind of this big idea that ransomware payments encourage crime. Now, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I'm somewhat ambivalent, of two minds when it comes to this, because people are going to be criminals kind of regardless of what we do in society. But nonetheless, we can talk about that. Now, ultimately, why don't we just do this as a society? Like, why don't we pass a law that says, hey, it's illegal to pay ransomware? Or why don't all the insurers just get together and say, hey, you know what? We're all losing a ton of cash because of this. Why don't we all just stop doing this all at once? Well, I mean, it does sound simple, doesn't it? It's, hey, let's just cut off the blood supply to these criminals. And then moving forward, there will just be no economic incentive for them to do that. So if you look in the news, you'll see right here, this is a public service announcement from the FBI. And it says, if my system is infected, should I pay the ransom? It says the FBI does not advocate paying a ransom. So the FBI is saying, hey, don't do this. Now, here's another news story. Is it time to ban ransomware insurance payments? The former head of the NCSC, which is over in the UK, called for a dialogue over whether or not it is time to ban insurers from covering ransomware payments. Another one by Bruce Sussman here is as ransomware payments double, some want them banned. Here's from Dark Reading, Fleming Shee. Ransomware attacks, why it should be illegal to pay the ransom. And of course, here in the United States, we already have some of this. If you're interested in this particular story, this is about when OFAC came out and was like, hey, just a reminder, if certain entities actually hit you with ransomware, you cannot pay that ransom. There is a presumption that it will be illegal to pay the ransom. Now, if you're a monstrous organization, you're like a Nike or a Facebook or somebody like that, yeah, you could probably get a waiver there. But for us normal people out there, that's just simply not going to happen. So if you want to watch that video, I'll link to it up above. And further on here, this is from the Institute for Security and Technology. They had a number of findings they just came out with, one of which was that governments should mandate organizations report ransom payments. I'm somewhat for that. It would depend upon, if there's privatization of that data, how that potential data could be misused, if bad guys could gain access to that. So then they would know, hey, these are the ones who've paid in the past, so they're willing to pay in the future. There could be some privacy issues there. And second, require organizations to consider alternatives before making payments. Hopefully, organizations are already trying to consider some type of alternative before making those payments. I think cyber insurers are very much kind of leading the charge on that already, because if they can just get that data somewhere else, they could, in theory, save a lot of time, heartache, and money, most importantly for those cyber insurers by doing that. Now, requiring alternatives, I'm not necessarily a large fan of government action because the government is more of a sledgehammer than a scalpel, but it would be interesting to see if they would enumerate amongst those points. But of course, we know it's just not that simple. This is a very, very difficult problem once you start jumping into it. So it seems like a lot of the businesses or a lot of the organizations or people saying, hey, this needs to be banned outright. Those, in my experience, tend to be people who are insulated from the world or government bureaucrats that have never been responsible for payroll. They've never owned or operated a business. So for them, they get paid on the 1st and the 15th every month, regardless. World War III could go down. They're still going to get paid. So we understand it's not that simple. Looking at the other side of the coin, not the other side of the corn, here is a very illustrative example that just happened. So in April 2021, the Washington Metro Police Department got hit with ransomware. Now, the attackers claimed, and it looks like they provided real evidence of this, that they stole about 250 gigabytes of data. Now, on that, they also threatened to publish that material if the ransom wasn't paid, but some of that material included informant material. Now, this is a point where it's very kind of in a simplistic way, we can say that, hey, if they don't pay the ransom, people could very well end up leaving the earth in very violent ways, in very painful ways, because they were, let's say, informing on organized crime and local gangs. Not necessarily something you want to be put out to the world. So it's not as simple as just saying, hey, we need to ban ransomware payment outright, because there could be very, very serious ramifications from that, including the death of other humans. Now, if you're a business and you're watching this, please don't get into this false sense of security where you're like, well, they've gone after these big organizations, they've gone after the police department. I'm not any of that. I'm just a normal business operating in wherever. Why would they come after me? Well, the same organization that allegedly went after the Metro Police Department in Washington, D.C. has also gone after car dealerships, pharmaceutical companies, and dozens of other companies out there. So yes, it can happen to you, and generally ransomware is not a result of some advanced persistent threat or some nation state going after somebody. It's purely a crime of opportunity and a crime of volume. So please make sure you keep that in mind. Now, what do I think the future holds here, being someone who specializes and really focuses in this particular area? Well, first of all, I think it's going to be doubtful that we're going to be banning outright ransomware payments in the USA anytime soon. I also find it very, very hard to believe that cyber insurance companies would just ban it outright like AXA has over in France. However, I think there are going to be a lot of changes coming up, and I'm already seeing those changes with my own policyholders. So foremost, ransomware, the limits available if something happens with ransomware, that's starting to be sublimited and co-insured. So we're seeing a lot less in terms of a pot of cash available to a business if they do become subject to a ransomware event. This, of course, would impact other reimbursement mechanisms, which I won't get too deep into here, but suffice to say that could lead to additional losses that are correlated with the ransomware event itself. And with those sublimits, we're seeing, even something as small as say like, hey, you only have 25,000 unless you implement these mandatory controls. A big one we're seeing right now is a cloud-based backup with some type of 2FA or MFA associated with that. So I think what we're going to be seeing here is the insurance industry, because they're the ones just burning through cash at rapid rates. And what we're seeing right now is that the average cyber insurance policy from the established insurers, not the startups, effectively needs to double in cost just to remain viable. So make sure you keep that in mind. So what I think we're going to see here is a much bigger push for cyber insurance companies to mandate controls that would likely avoid the probability of being impacted by ransomware to begin with. Now, as a business, all of this being said, the easiest way to think about this is, okay, what do you need to put in place to reasonably minimize the possibility that you even have to make this decision, right? If you're sitting there and you're going, well, I understand, we don't want to fund organized crime. This is a blight on the world at the current moment. But likewise, I have a payroll. I have people I'm responsible to. I've got families that are being fed because of the payroll that's going out every month. Just look with your IT, your MSP there, and start looking at, okay, what reasonable controls would be very affordable that we can put in place. Some of those you're going to see on the screen in front of you, so you're more than welcome to pause the video here. But at the end of the day, your network architecture and how you operate business is probably different than everybody else out there. So please start having that conversation now, because either somebody like me on the insurance side is going to come to you and we're going to say, hey, if you want to continue with this cyber insurance, or if you want to start having a cyber insurance policy, you're going to have these minimum controls in place. So it's just easier to have them in place now, have a plan of implementation moving forward, so that way you're not just shelling out a ton of cash at once. I understand that as a fellow business owner, but speak with your IT, speak with your MSP, try and figure out what those reasonable controls will likely have the most impact for the fewest dollars spent. All right, if you enjoyed this presentation and you learned something, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, because it feeds the algorithm, and you will see a new video every Thursday. With that, stay safe.